Hello everyone, I'm Hannah French and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the Claw Studio here at the Royal Opera House for this insight supported by Rolex. Now tonight, Puccini leads us into a world of drama and deception for his operatic thriller, Tosca. You may well know the action-packed tale of politics and passion as a young couple gets swept up in forces far beyond their control. But we invite you tonight to come with us backstage behind the scenes and find out about a new production of Tosca that is heading to the heart of Covent Garden this September. It's from director Oliver Mears and conductor Jakob Huscher, their first collaboration, and Jakob just stepping into his role as music director of the Royal Opera. Talk to both of them in just a little while. But first, it takes a creative village to put on a grand opera. So to tell us more about that, please will you join me in welcoming Simon Lima Holdsworth, Anna Morrissey, and Oliver Mears. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining me. This has been, I imagine, a journey so far, pieces of a jigsaw. You've been working together, and Tosca, first night, 11th of September. I believe you're in stage rehearsals now. Ollie, it must be a thrill to see it all come together.
Yeah, it is. It's fantastic. I mean, it's been a long time in the making, as you suggest, and normally these projects take around 3 or 4 years to put in the schedules and to put them in the planning and to cast them, and then you design the project with the set and costume designers and think about how it's all going to be realised on stage, and then before you know it, you're in rehearsals with the performers, and then before you know that, you're on stage. So it all comes around very quickly, but it is very exciting to see it all come together. And we've had the orchestra for the first time with the singers on stage today. So that's always a very exciting moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me, I mean, Tosca is a really exciting way to kick off a season. Was it a thunderbolt moment? You woke up one day and went, I know, 2025 is going to be Tosca.
Yeah, I think it kind of was in a way. And obviously with Jakob's arrival, that's a big moment for all of us. And we wanted to make sure that it was as big a moment on stage and in the context of our season as it could possibly be.
Yeah.
And Jakob and I hadn't worked together, so it was very important that this was a piece that we both felt very passionately about, and that it was a piece that really exemplified all of the things that we think are important in opera, which is, of course, yes, fantastic music, and but also fantastic drama too. And Tosca is nothing but wonderful theatre, and it felt like a really good piece to start Jakob's reign with.
Exactly. And the thing is that when you revive productions, they can come with all sorts of energy and fizz, especially with a new collaboration. But you decided, no, it's time for an entirely new production.
Yeah, and also I was conscious that it's the first ever modern or contemporary production of Tosca that there has been since 1900, when the first production was produced with Puccini in the audience 125 years ago. And I think it felt from that perspective absolutely right that in 2025, with Jakob's arrival, that we decided to do a brand new version, a contemporary version of one of the great masterpieces of the repertoire.
Yes, you say contemporary. Is it possible to sum it up in a couple of words? What's the core principle of it? What's at its heart?
Well, I don't think you can do a production of Tosca that is abstract or too conceptual. I don't think you can set it on Mars. I don't think it works like that. And it's also not something which lends itself to intellectual, abstruse ideas. That's not what Puccini wanted. Puccini wanted to give the audience a wild ride at the theatre, and that's what we're here to do, first and foremost. And I think that also he was very preoccupied with the location of this opera. It's the only opera that he wrote which is set in Italy, and he was extremely conscientious about making sure that it was as realistic as possible, and to the extent that he would go out into the Roman hills and hear the bells to make sure that they were accurate in the score. And it's an opera that's very influenced by Verismo, by that tradition. It's realistic, it's naturalistic, and as I say, it's set in Rome, so we didn't want to move too far away from that, but also to set it in an era that might be more recognisable to a modern audience than 1800, and therefore we hope to make it as immediate and as direct as possible, because this was a piece that was in some ways a forerunner for all of the breakthroughs of modernism that were to come with Electra and Salome and the Rite of Spring and so on and so forth. That period, it's just before then. And so there's a unique energy of danger and perversion and violence which anticipates all of those breakthroughs. And I think to really make the audience on the edge of their seats and also as shocked as the original audience were, then we need to make it, I think, contemporary.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Because every audience ever since has experienced those things. We know those things are coming up, but it's that energy.
That raw energy.
Exactly. That comes from thinking of it that way. Now, Anna and Simon, we are going to talk to you in a moment about your particular areas of specialism, but I think many people in the room will know the story of Tosca, but just in case some details escape you, or in case you are new to this, let's have a quick trip through the plot. This is not fastest finger first, but we'll do it together. Okay, so the traditional tale set over 48 hours. It's a really tight do,
Even less, actually. It's more like 16 hours.
More like 16 hours in Rome. It's 1800 originally. We know that's going to be slightly different. Napoleon's at war with Europe. Rome now controlled by the Allied forces, but there is a prisoner on the loose. Who is he? Anna, you caught my eye. Who is he and where is he when we find him?
That's Angelotti, and he has escaped the prison, and he has come to a church. I think that's not a spoiler to say, to really flee for his life. He is a political prisoner. He's on the opposite side politically from Scarpia, and so we meet him as having escaped prison.
Yes,
and
hiding in a church.
Run.
Right, hiding in a church. His sister had a key and let him in. There's somebody else in the church, and he's an artist. You're an artist. Who's in the church?
Well, thank you. Cavaradossi is in the church. He's painting. He's painting something. He's painting an altarpiece in our production.
And the face is very familiar. And the sacristy goes, I know that person. She comes here often.
Exactly. You know the piece better than me, than I do. So.
It's fine. So he recognises her and is like, hang on a minute, she's one of our congregation, the sister of Angelotti, who's let him in. But then Tosca, Cavaradossi's girlfriend, also turns up and also recognises the face.
Well, but before then, Angelotti, who's an old friend of Cavaradossi's in the opera, not in the play, I believe, and befriends Cavaradossi, and Cavaradossi said, okay, I'm going to protect you from Scarpia, because he's of a very similar kind of liberal left-wing mindset to Angelotti, and he decides to hide him in the Attavanti Chapel, which is the family chapel of Angelotti and his sister. It's all very complicated, isn't it? And he hides Angelotti in the chapel, and his girlfriend turns up, Tosca, and it's a very awkward situation. And so it's quite interesting, actually, in that duet, that it's a love duet, ostensibly, but there's also this hidden tension whereby Cavaradossi is always trying to make sure that, well, that Tosca leaves as quickly as possible because he's got a political prisoner to help. Yes.
Right, so he wants him to leave. She finally does leave, but unfortunately, Scarpia, whom you've mentioned, does turn up. He is head of the secret police, and he's on the lookout for this prisoner. Now, what clues are there, and where's he going to find him? Who wants this one? Anna?
Well, he learns of it, so a cannon goes off which tells the world that we know now that the political prisoner Angelotti has escaped. He comes into the chapel and various clues emerge. So we notice that some food that Cavaradossi was supposed to have eaten has now been eaten, and it's a clue to the fact that someone was there. We have a fan that tells something of a disguise that's been left, and so bit by bit they realise that Angelotti must have been
right. So Scarpia's got his evidence in order to wind up Tosca and to lead him to where he thinks that the prisoner might be. Now, there's a big musical moment, isn't there, at the end of Act 1, the Te Deum.
Yeah, I mean, it's extraordinary, this choral moment, the Te Deum, which I think was very influenced by, well, as the whole piece was influenced by an opera called La Gioconda, which was written about 20 years before. And again, there's this enormous choral moment which acts as this kind of amplification of some of the feelings that the principal characters are experiencing.
Yes.
And of course, Puccini came from a family of church musicians, and he could play the organ himself, where he was from Lucca. And so he knew all about that tradition and the way in which Catholicism, of course, is very much often about spectacle.
Yes.
And he thought this would be a terrific way of ending Act One with an enormous spectacle. But what's interesting about it is that although it's ostensibly a religious service, you've got Scarpia talking about his sexual infatuation with Tosca in a way that, again, feels very, very modern and subversive for the time. And in retrospect, it's quite extraordinary he kind of got away with it without censure, because this tension between his erotic fantasies and the religious service is very new and very original.
Yes.
Sort of moral and immoral. Yeah.
Right, yeah, all
Both
hanging in the
times.
balance. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think we could probably talk about the plot all evening, but we do need to press on. How's about, in a nutshell, Act Two? If I say the word interrogation, Simon, what do you say?
Torture. I don't know.
Yeah, well, it takes a real turn, doesn't it? And it becomes very sinister, with Scarpia getting his information out of either Cavaradossi or Tosca.
Well, Cavaradossi was
Terrible.
hoping to hide his mate in his villa in a well, halfway down a well. And nevertheless, he is captured by Scarpia and his policeman and taken for an interrogation, and behaves very arrogantly towards Scarpia, because he's pretty sure that he's hidden Angelossi very securely. So he's taken away to be tortured. And again, this is another example of the way in which the score is very original. And actually, when it was first performed here in 1900, the English critics, were extremely disapproving of this torture scene, which was unprecedented in opera. So he's tortured. And to make it even more exquisite, because of course this opera is very much about sadism, Scarpia has got Tosca in the same room to listen to her boyfriend being tortured at the same time, and manages to effectively elicit the information that he needs from Tosca, which Cavaradossi is very cross about, because he was relying on Tosca not saying anything at all. Right. But because she's so in love with this man, the one thing she wants to do is prevent him experiencing pain.
Yes.
So she gives the game away. And then Cavaradossi, Scarpia says, okay, well, I'll let your boyfriend go if you have sex with me. And that's obviously a plot twist which is not very congenial to Tosca.
Quite. Quite. And just to fast forward, the scene ends with her seemingly giving in, but actually...
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. I mean, spoiler alerts left, right and centre. Yeah. This is an opera with some great tunes, and nobody comes out alive who are in the main cast by the end. So, I'm really sorry if anybody was helping.
Spoletta's the only one.
Spoletta, yeah, okay, fair enough. Maybe there's a lesson there, maybe not. Anyway, so yes, so that is the end of him by the end of that act, and then some kind of reconciliation between Tosca and Cavaradossi in Act 3.
Yes.
In terms of realizing what happened, unpicking the situation, imagining a life of freedom. But Scarpia twisted the knife and betrayed her, didn't keep his end of the deal, even beyond the grave.
Yes.
And
indeed.
We know the end.
Final horrible twist.
Yeah. Final horribleness. Right, okay, I think we've got the plot now. Everyone got the plot? Brilliant, love it. Okay, so this is clearly a team effort, both in telling you the plot and putting a grand opera on stage. Simon and Anna, you've also worked with costume designers, Ilona Karas on costumes and Fabiana Piccioli on lighting. This is quite a team. How quickly do you assemble them? You mentioned that early, but how early on in the process is it that you bring all these artistic minds together?
Well, this is exactly the same team that I was very fortunate to work with on Rigoletto, which some of you may have seen from 2021, and then subsequently Jephthah in 2023. And of course, it's a very special chemistry or alchemy that one has with a team that one knows. And I've worked with Simon for nearly 20 years. I've worked with Anna for, I think we were working out 17 years, something like that.
Yeah, okay.
Ilona for 12 years. So we've got a very, very good understanding of what each other likes, and we respect each other's opinion. And that results in a very exciting, creative partnership. And of course, when you're directing, you're pulling a team together, you want a team that are going to represent the piece as effectively as one needs, and who have the kind of imaginative ideas and spirit to come come up with the most fantastic art. And,
yes. And speaking of which,
this is very much
Simon,
the case here. Yeah.
Simon, so you have designed the sets for this production. Set in Rome, it's rooted in Rome, its very essence is in Rome. What are some of the challenges of bringing that to a modern audience and to reimagining this?
Well, I think Tosca is just such a great piece. It's so succinct. So in 3 very clear different locations. You're not swimming upstream with it in any way. I mean, it's just a fantastic piece. So in that sense, it's a lot less challenging than most operas to design.
Yes. So, well, that's fair. And I think for anybody concerned that you may have gone completely wild with it, you begin in a church.
Actually, that's the question that so many people were asking me before when I was commissioned. People in the theatre were saying, Act 1 is set in a church, isn't it? And that I sort of realised was a code for, you're not doing anything too crazy with this, are you? So, but no, Act 1 is set in a church. There's a slight twist there. I live in Berlin at the moment, and there's a quite famous church in Berlin which is remains a ruin. And I was on the phone to Ollie, who was working in Salzburg at the time, and you were there. The cathedral there had been bombed in the war.
Yes. By one stray bomb, it went through the dome of Salzburg Cathedral. Yeah.
And we started sort of discussing whether Act 1 could actually be set in a church that has been struck or hit by a missile, because Act 1 there are cannons.
Yes.
It's actually to announce the release, the escape of Angelotti, but also there are cannons during the Te Deum. So we just channeling, hopefully, Puccini's original theme.
Well, yeah. People forget that the original of Tosca is set in 1800, right at the beginning of the Napoleonic Wars. And of course, in 1800, if there was a war going on between nations, between France and Britain, or between the small Italian states and France, then you could be living hundreds of miles away from the battle. You wouldn't really necessarily know that there was a war on.
Yes.
But as soon as you're setting Tosca in the modern day, the fact is that it's set during a war. And as we know very well, it's very hard to escape the consequences of war now. And that's something that we hope to reflect in this production.
And the more I looked, I saw more and more pictures, like at the Kaiser Wilhelm and other churches and cathedrals, of people carrying on and doing church services amongst the ruins.
Right.
So that's the slightly unusual tack there.
Yeah. Interesting. Anna, can I come to you? Because you are a movement and intimacy director on Tosca. And I'm really interested in the way that you come to what is a very well-known opera in a new production, and what new elements you bring to that, as you might, for example, a reprise of another production.
So the brief of a movement director really emerges from the director. So you'll have I'll have first conversations with Ollie, finding out about the piece, what directions he's taking in terms of tone and setting, and all the things we've just talked about in terms of bringing it up to date. And then, of course, engaging with the piece as well and bringing your own ideas to it and going, oh, this is interesting. And because we are in the world of realism, what has emerged as the brief is obviously to work with the chorus on this large Te Deum in Act 1, but also to inform character, story. Do we believe what's happening in the body? We read the body as well as listen, and in terms of what they're saying. So how does all that stuff manifest in the body? And so working with the cast, principal cast, but also large-scale chorus.
Yes. How does that really play out in the rehearsal room? Are you kind of up close, or are you stepping back to see what an audience would see, or isn't it?
It's really both, to be honest. So you can come in and offer perhaps an individual session. So, for example, with Angelotti, we know that he has a backstory that is very imprinted on his body. He's escaped prison. We have concocted a backstory where that's been quite a violent prison, and he's been subjected to torture. So it's important that reads on the body. Yes. So in that session, we did some work with him. I did some work with him separate from the rehearsal room in a different studio with our actors. We also have actors in this production. to help him really like offer a process to help physicalize that. And then sometimes it's about being slightly more back and offering a note to Ollie or the cast and being a bit more light touch. So
one of the really important things that Anna's been focusing on, and it's something that you alluded to at the beginning in terms of what this piece is about, which is ultimately about these two young lovers who are caught up in forces beyond their control, is really establishing that emotional and physical connection which they have between each other, and that chemistry is all important. And Anna is an expert at bringing that intimate work to life, and you've been really leading on
We
that.
felt that was really important, that you really want to believe that Tosca and Cavaradossi really love each other at the beginning, because Ollie pointed to that tension that he kind of needs her to leave, and she has a jealousy that she walks into. But if that is all argument and tension, then you don't buy the love. And so we were quite keen in our early conversations to have all of those elements in, as well as the heart of them as a couple.
And that physicality is vital, isn't it? Because whether it is believing the love story or believing the really weighty issues of Tosca, because, you know, they are weighty. There's violence, there's assault, there's all sorts of different elements in there. How do you support the singers in that kind of balance between the physical, dramatic part of it and how they're feeling themselves?
Well, there's something in intimacy which is called de-rolling, or where you can offer people an actual space or an exercise to regulate the nervous system. Some people don't need it. You know, they're very professional and they can just breathe their way out of it and they can step off, and some people will take it. And so there is that, which is just, that's a practice that's coming more and more into rehearsal rooms, where when we are doing some really explicit work around violence or trauma, you can offer people a particular breath work or a particular stretch that just allows them to decompress and not take it out into their everyday lives. So you can do things like that.
A last quick question to each of you. Anna, first, you mentioned the chorus earlier, and I always think that's fascinating when I attend an opera anyway, because you get invested in little stories of characters, and they're not singing a particular line, they're singing the same lines as everybody else, but they go off into little groups. That's all you, isn't it?
Mostly me, but I mean, it is with others. And as you said, opera is all about, I mean, theatre making is about teams, but opera is especially about teams. So I love, it's one of my favourite aspects of working here, is working with this chorus. They're incredible. They're a brilliant, fun, talented bunch of people to work with. So, yeah, it's all in the planning, really. You get very precious time with them. You don't get a lot. There's a lot of energy in the room, and so you just really need to know what you're doing, who's doing what. I work from Simon's Design, so I work really closely with the costume team to know who's wearing what. I work with William Spalding, the chorus director, to make sure that when I stage people, I haven't put the wrong voices separate to each other. That's an easy mistake to make, is you do it all visually, and then, of course, they need to be near their singing groups, in their singing groups. So a lot in that, just to make sure that everyone feels that things are right, and then hopefully it works, and then you can be a bit freer in the room. Right. Yeah.
Visually speaking, Simon, last question to you. Can you give us any... Spoilers is too strong a word, but any more clues about the visual nature? I feel like we've kind of got a little bit into the first act, Act 2, Act 3. Just a hint.
There's a lot of marble, actually.
Marble?
Yeah, an awful lot of marble.
Good old Italians.
Yeah, there is quite a lot of marble in Rome. Act 1 is very much Baroque marble. Act 2 is more 20th century marble. So that gave a sort of quality to the set design, and Act 2 has a slight quality of a mausoleum about it, because I hope it's not too much what if someone dies at the end of Act 2. So it's quite a nice sort of surround, and I don't know what else to say really.
Come and see it.
I hope it feels like Rome. I think it does.
Yes.
Yeah, it does.
Ollie, I could ask you so many more questions, but you're going to stick around.
I'm going to stick
So
around.
I'm going to catch them then. Thank you, all three of you. Ollie, I think you're going to move up this way a little bit. But Simon, Anna, good luck with the rest of the rehearsals and for the first night next week. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, what a start from this creative team, just giving us a real insight into this new staging of Tosca. But it's a very special occasion for another reason, because it's the first collaboration between Oliver Mears and Jakob Hrucher, who is to be the new, or already has been appointed, Director of Music of the Royal Opera. So to mark the start of that new chapter here, let's chat to them both and invite Jakob to come join us. Jakob, your first production at the Royal Opera House, and we've heard a little bit from Ollie already. In fact, we've heard quite a lot from Ollie about how much he appreciates Tosca and Puccini. But what about you? What draws you to this opera? Why is it such a great place to start?
Good evening, everyone. It's a great privilege to be here with all of you, and a great joy. Well, I think so much has been said about this piece and about Puccini. Quite honestly, it's the combination of all things. It's thrilling, it's intimate, it's brutal as well as subtle. It has an amazing momentum. You never feel it stops, you never feel in a pond, but always in a stream, so to speak. And the roles of the singers, the chorus, simply the staging part, and the orchestra in the pit is so beautifully balanced. So Puccini simply knew how to compose operas with very little, if not no flaws, so to speak. And except, of course, at his time, it felt for many people tasteless. But that's a very subjective thing. And we've got so far from this bias, which was mentioned here on the critics at the time. So many of them criticized somehow themselves in a way, because they couldn't cope with their own problem with this straightforwardness, I would say. Today, in the age of movies and really kind of direct approach to many issues, honest attitude, it actually fits amazingly, and it feels timeless these days.
Yes.
So it's thrilling, and of course it's a passionate piece, and I am a passionate person. So I would love, to say that to start my tenure after what I've done here before, with something so, so full of life and so perfect. That's an amazing privilege for me.
Yes. Well, it's a privilege for all of us to have the two of you sitting next to each other. And I really would love to know about the process at the point that, one of you suggested Tosca. Is anyone going to put the hand up?
That may have been me.
That may have been you. And did you agree immediately on the angle of the production, or is it something that's evolved?
Well, I think we agreed immediately on wanting to do it together. There was no doubt about it. And then there was a process of just getting to know each other's intentions. And of course, there's pretty much for the director to indicate. I mean, we have our score, and we have subtleties to take care of and new points of view to establish. But from a musical point of view, it's a given fact. And you just have to be really inventive about in a way which I love, actually, that the stream of your thoughts and feelings have to go through a relatively narrow channel, and therefore, there's so much, to gain from this narrowness, or simply the limitation. But in a way, that's where the inspiration of the staging comes in, because there, not really fully, but there's so many ways how to do it, and I'm fascinated by them, and I was so curious to hear what is coming.
In some ways, the most exciting part of the process is in the studio, when you're discovering so many things for the first time, and of course, us working together for the first time has been great, but it's also, of course, a three-way process, because there's myself leading the staging, Jakob leading the musical side, but then also the singers, of course, who come with their own ideas, and it's it's always fantastic, despite a kind of relatively limited period of time in which to do that, to generate that creativity and that creative, those creative fireworks.
Yes.
From that dialogue that happens within the room.
I wonder if there are any moments that you could share with us. I sometimes think this when you watch a ballet and you think, was there a moment at which the conductor went, I just want to take a bit more time here, and the dancers go, no, we will fall over if you do that. Are there moments of tension, but tension in a good way, between what you want to do on stage and the freedom that you want and what you want to do with the score?
It's always felt very organic, I think, to me. There was that little moment yesterday when we were talking about the timing of the entrance of a character. And I had it in my head that a character was going to come in at a particular time, and then Jakob felt that it would be much more musical that they came in a little bit later, because he's absolutely right, of course. So it's small things like that. But I don't know whether there's something from your point of view, Jakob.
No, I wouldn't call it tensions, but there's, of course, this bubbling with different perspectives. The stage and the music and the acting and choreography sometimes and choral singing, all these areas need their validation, but that's the charm, to actually find the place where all those components will get satisfied without losing the substance of the idea. So if you call it tensions, then these tensions are welcome.
Yes.
Because I really believe a real creative process comes also from slight disagreements. It would be a fallacy to think that we sit there completely unified in everything, and we just present what we want. The singers just say, "Oh, that's great," and we go through it once, twice, and then everything is ready. It's actually we are in a theater, so there is every now and then a little bit of a drama, but then the conclusions and the solutions after the dramas are even more pleasant, no? I think.
But what is also interesting, and Jakob, you alluded to this earlier, what's interesting about the really great works of opera, in that they are great theatre as well as great music. And I'm thinking of pieces like The Turn of the Screw or Peter Grimes or Tosca, is that so much of the work has already been done for you by Puccini and by his librettist, who were very skilled at distilling the original play into something that lasts about 2 hours and should have you on the edge of your seat. And so many of the things in relation to pacing or suspense or drama, it's in the score already. It's
You've
not
got to
like
trust
Handel.
Puccini that it's
It's not like Handel, where you've got to you have a lot of dialogue with the conductor about how to pace it and make sure that there is that propulsive movement forward. A lot of it is done for you, I think, in Puccini, and that is what makes him one of the great masters of the stage, as much as a master of opera.
Well, I would add one thing. There are so many amazing genius figures of music who composed operas, who nevertheless presented some kind of a jewel of music, and adapted this talent of music somewhat to the stage, and then it's a hard work for the whole creative team to, from this meeting of two aspects, to create a real marriage. Well, Puccini is a completely different cup of tea, because everything he does musically is in service of the drama. There's absolutely no bar in the music which has no meaning to what the stage needs. And he is the master of masters in this way, plus the momentum, which really is sometimes breathless. And actually, if you, audience, sometimes feel like on a roller coaster and kind of, I catch breath sometimes with difficulty. At the beginning of Tosca, it's such a drama straight away. We get to it soon when we speak about music a little bit. It's shocking, and yet, I think that's what the critics back then found problematic, but somehow falsely. This shock is in service of the depth and radicality of the drama. So it's not like I'm shocking you in order to be shocked and go home shocked, but in a way to get your attention straight away and be beautifully lost to the journey of this opera work.
I like that. Now, you've mentioned the singers. There are two exceptional sopranos that are taking the role of Tosca in this production. The casting of Anna Netrebko has drawn a lot of attention. We're not here to delve into the wider discussion of that this evening, but could you share a little more with us about the qualities that you were looking for in a soprano or sopranos in casting this role, and what each of these artists bring to Tosca? Do you want to go first, Ollie?
Well, I mean, it's probably widely known that there were some rather unusual circumstances in relation to the casting of this piece, because Lisa Davidson was going to sing Tosca and had been in our planning for several years, and then she had the wonderful news that she was pregnant with twins, which meant that she had to withdraw from Die Walküre, and that was the beginning of this year. And I can tell you that finding world-class sopranos at 8 months' notice is no small task, especially who are going to be available for 10 performances. And so we were delighted that 2 world-class sopranos were available, and I think both of them do have very contrasting strengths and vocal qualities. And Jakob can talk about this more articulately than I can, but the role of Tosca does have some very specific demands in terms of vocal power, projection, because the orchestra is very large and often very loud. But there are also these very famous moments of tenderness with the tenor in the duets that they sing, and also the famous aria. So there are many combinations of qualities that you need in a Tosca. And it's fantastic that we've got 2 who are so different in their musical and theatrical personalities. So I certainly recommend seeing both of them if you can.
No, I don't have much to add, because you really said all of that perfectly. I would say Tosca, it maybe escapes one's attention when you don't think about it, but the figure, Floria Tosca, she's a singer. It's actually kind of, if I may say, the 2 productions I'm doing now, Tosca and the Macropolis case, which comes later, they both have the leading soprano presenting on stage a figure of a singer, and not just some singer, but a diva. It means that person who presents this role, or both of them, but now we talk about Tosca, to the audience must be absolutely, doubtlessly presenting this force of nature, of a wonderful singer on stage. It kind of has to blow you away. If you have doubts, oh, is this a strong personality? Or if you think, oh, this is interesting, but maybe a little too timid or a little bit too reserved, that's not Tosca. I mean, Tosca is a person who really kind of shouts into the world what kind of personality she is. And we, as you said, we have 2 people, 2 amazing artists who belong to the absolutely top category of this kind of singers, as protagonists and as vocal artists. So I'm really grateful.
Have they been watching each other in rehearsals, or has it been a separate rehearsal?
I think I answered that in my previous answer. I think they stand for themselves, you know.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I think Freddie de Tommaso was watching both of them.
Yes, I imagine.
And I think he would confirm that they're both extraordinary personalities.
I mean, it's very interesting what Jakob was saying about that need to have a singer who can really embody that idea of a diva. And it's no coincidence that the most famous soprano of all time, Maria Callas, made her name through performances in this building of Tosca.
Yeah.
And there's something which demands that electrifying charisma in that role, which you really need, and which our 2 sopranos certainly have, but also a kind of danger to it, because unless there's an element of care for your voice, it can tear your voice apart. And there are still those who consider that because Callas didn't look after herself, because he threw herself into those performances in the way that she did irrevocable damage to her voice. And so there's also got to be impeccable technique to survive singing Tosca. And some sopranos have come a cropper, but that's not a danger here, I think.
No.
Stamina, simply, you know, it's really, it's a challenge, but a beautiful one. And you have to be the right person to welcome that kind of a challenge.
Exactly.
That's, I think, put in other words, in other words, what it means. You know, you have to want to embrace this kind of exposure, so to speak.
Yes. Now, you mentioned Freddie Di Tommaso. So let's just focus in on him for a moment, because many would say that Tosca is a singer's opera, and yet it brings demands of a singer from both the dramatic and the vocal side of things. Now, he is a remarkable singer. You know, thinking about him as Cavaradossi, jumping in 2021 here to sing that. But I believe he's sung the role maybe 50 times, 11 different productions, more than 50 times. I think he even jumped in on one last night or the night before. It's incredible. How do you work with an artist like that who brings the character, and then you say, yes, you are the character, and this is our production? How do you make that work?
Well, it obviously depends on the personality. I mean, what Freddie's got is not only an extraordinary natural talent, but also an openness and a curiosity, which is fantastic for a stage director, because it means that you can really work with them. And although Freddie has done many performances of Tosca, including in the old production here, he hasn't done a brand new production. And as far as I know,
it's the same for Jerry, in fact.
Yes, yeah. I think that's true.
It's an interesting aspect. You think so many performances, but it's a different thing just to do something quickly and adopt the ideas without properly diving in, or to spend, especially like here, where we take care of what I call the anti-fast food approach, you know, so that you really cook slowly and not just something with a lot of spice and salt and ketchup, and it's really a good taste, you know, but it needs time. So this is an opportunity for the singers to participate.
And Freddie famously looks back at singers of Puccini's day. He's fascinated, isn't he, by the kind of blueprint of those historic recordings. So you have somebody in him that is looking forwards and backwards, but really fascinating that this is his first new production of it and an opportunity to shape his
and just things like, for example, we printed off copies of the original Sardou play, which is quite different to the opera. And in fact, Sardou said that he thought that the libretto for the opera of Tosca was better than his play. And it was a very skilled piece of work. But there's all sorts of backstory, which has been cut from the opera, which is really useful for performers to know about when they do it. And that's something that Freddie hadn't done before. In fact, I don't think any of the performers had read the play before. And so that kind of thing, when you've got a little bit more time with a new production, I think can be very illuminating for the performers.
Well, which leads us to Gerald Finley, who is so experienced, but was that also relatively new to him? Was that
I think he told me he's done a lot of that, but this is first time he's got this beautiful time to, dig in and discover details and really fine-tune the character of each phrase and try the best approach to the momentum and all those things which sound a little abstract when one describes them, but so essential for everyone standing on stage if they really should present something well cooked, you see.
And Jerry is incredibly smart performer, and again very, very curious and super interested in detail. And that is a great pleasure for a director like me, who's very interested in detail and specifics, because I always think that the generality is the enemy of good art in general. I'm sure you probably say the same thing, Jakob. And I think we've all seen many, many Toscas where it's just been very general. And often that's the consequence of the way in which opera is put on. For example, in other houses where there might be, if you're lucky, one dress rehearsal for a singer, and they might be meeting their colleagues on stage for the first time in a performance. That's not uncommon. And I think Jerry particularly really thrives from the opportunity to work on text, work on detail, work on how he works with his props. And he gets, I think, great pleasure and satisfaction from doing that. And it's a joy to work with.
The scene where Scarpia is stabbed, these moments that are so famous, they're almost like the to be or not to be moments. How are you going to approach these this time? And actually, as you say, to have that time to spend it over the detail of it.
And also to develop character and to really, because I mean, for example, one of the things we really wanted with this, or I wanted to do with this production, is to really focus on this idea that in the original, Scarpia is he's a working class character. He's a peasant from Sicily, and he's been brought up to Rome to clean up the city. And there's nothing which is refined or delicate or elegant about him. He's peasant, he's earthy, and he likes his food, he likes his wine, and of course he likes his women too. And to find that kind of sweaty, earthy character was something that I began early with Jerry, even before the rehearsal started. We were in email contact about what he was going to eat and what his backstory was, and he was so precise and diligent about finding more details, more text that could support his character development. And that's why we do it. I mean, directors anyway. Without
revealing details, I really do think that the portrayal of Scarpia in our production is, in the best sense, as far from routine as possible. This figure is a villain, as we all know and kind of like, but it's often portrayed in a generic way.
Yeah.
I think
he sounds like a very 3D rather than 2D character.
Yes, exactly, and I think it's more scary in a way, because it's that kind of a villain where you think, I could meet such a person behind the door here.
Okay.
I hope not, but
just checking.
I go that way anyway.
Yeah, I'm following you. Okay. I'm loving this food analogy, recipes. I get the sense you two are a good recipe for future productions. Is there anything that you could say or share with us that you feel like you've learned from each other so far that you will then take into other productions?
Well, I think it's a gift for us in the musical team always to have a director who is very musical and sensitive to music, and without losing any independence of the bright view of what the staging needs, to do everything in constant reflection of what the music indicates and needs, and for what the music stands. And that's what I learn. And something I believe myself is very important, that you don't think that if you really listen carefully to what other people around you suggest from the depth of their conviction or instinct, if you listen carefully and incorporate a lot of it into your system, that it's a sign of weakness, or that you lose your authority. That's what this house is amazing for, that people work like a great team always and under all circumstances. And it's interesting to see some of divas and some of turbulent personalities kind of giving into the ethics of this house, because it really is absolutely essential to work together. And yet when you do it, then the individual personalities shine out. It's not like you need to lose your personality in order for the others to come in. It's a beauty of this teamwork, and that's, I think, what we embraced in the rehearsal process wonderfully.
Yes, exactly. And I think that, from my point of view, working with Jakob is really reaffirmed in my mind, and it's part of my journey as a director, which I think that as you get older and as you mature as a director, I think as a director when you're starting out, your instinct is always to control. To direct, maybe over-direct, actually.
Right.
And particularly working on a piece like this and with singers like this, because I think every bit of repertoire has a different kind of breed of singers. The singers who do Handel are very different from the singers who do Puccini. The singers who do Janacek are very different to the singers who do Verdi, I think. And what is required sometimes with a piece like this is actually just allowing performers more space and more liberty than might be your initial instinct. And I think working with Anna in particular has been like that, working with her on Gioconda last year in Salzburg, but also on this time round. And you're very good at that, Jakob, that idea of allowing a performer to do what they do naturally. And very often, in fact, probably most often, they come up with great ideas themselves because they feel that freedom.
Yeah. It's all the flavours shining within your magnificent stew. Thank you both. It is time for us to look a bit more at the music in depth. But Ollie, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your instincts with us. All the very best for the opening night next week. Thank you, Ollie. Jakob, what a treat to have you delve into the score with us. This is excellent. Now, from the very opening bars of Tosca, we are in a very specific soundscape. We are right there in Rome. We're immersed in that world of the opera. And I know that you're now going to talk us through some of the themes, some of the ways the characters are shown and how they evolve. We've got musicians coming to join us as well. So please do take it away and tell us more. And as he does, can we also please welcome our repetitor, Richard Fu.
So I thought, usually there is an opportunity also to present some singing and some arias or excerpts, but we don't have singers here present. So I thought it would be kind of beautiful, nevertheless, to have musicians with me. And, Puccini was a fascinating personality in terms of bringing new sounds and new sound combinations into his scores and in reality. And in fact, as he wanted to portray, as was said here before, the here and now of Rome, which works even now in 2025, but really the place so important for Puccini, he used some special effects. Puccini was a master of using beautifully not just the pit where the orchestra is sitting and obviously the stage with the singers and chorus, but also the spaces in the area of the theater, especially off stage, so behind the set. There is something which Puccini really was somehow obsessed with, but he creates an amazing combination of layers of messages. So while the singers are having conversation on stage, some off-stage group is singing something else, and while singers have one kind of character or atmosphere on stage, the orchestra is presenting something in contrast. And these things, we're used to them because they were used more and more throughout the 20th century. But back then in 1900, it was quite a novelty. So my little talk has two areas, basically. I would like to follow what has been said here about the plot and present to you, together with Richard, some of the core important motives which characterize the figures of the opera. And then in the second part, I chose to show you a little bit of that, what we call tone painting. So that means there is a characterization through music about something very specific, and the music really indicates something which can trigger your visual imagination. And then I have one insight. For those of you who are experts on music, I kind of apologize because you know it so well already. But there is this one phenomenon which Puccini repeats using. It's called ostinato in Italian. It's obstinate, something you repeat and repeat and repeat. And that is a phenomenon which he uses with great pleasure in order to work beautifully with the tension. And I would like to show you a little bit of that at the end of this section. So I go closer to Richard here. Thank you, Richard, for being with us here. So as you know, Tosca starts with these chords which have become cultic, so to speak, in the opera world, something like Beethoven 5, pa, 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 everyone knows what that is. So we have this amazing opening of Tosca, and Richard, if you could just play that for us, those 3 bars. Okay, so everyone has heard this. It could be a kind of a radio tone or something in order for everyone to switch off because it's so scary. This is something we used to, but when it was presented for the first time, I have to guarantee to you that for every single person in the audience must have been a shock. And not just because it's loud and brutal and has accents, but also this is the portrayal of Scarpia, of the main villain of the opera. And of course, it's a person who is completely immoral. And in our musical world, so to speak, these chords are also immoral because they are the most prohibited sequences in the music theory or music habit or music culture, if you want. I mean, these chords would have never been used by Giuseppe Verdi, not even Rossini or Mozart. But Puccini wanted to shock. And in fact, I asked Richard maybe to show us what kind of an allowed version of those chords could be if the opera would start in a similar way, but without that provocation. Okay, that's, Richard, exactly what I wanted. It's a bit like at music school, but that's all right. I wanted to say that actually those three chords, which is B flat major, A flat major, and E major, you can forget it immediately. It simply is a sequence of chords which, if you brought to your music class as an adept of composition, the teacher should just throw away, because this is not what you do. Especially the second and third, if you can show it. So that connection between A flat and E, just those notes. Yeah, this is something which is not used in this way. These are very simple chords, but in a way put in a sequence which you are not supposed to be exposed to, you know. So this is a beautiful portrayal of someone who, by hearing sensitively to this, you are to hate, you know, because it's a person not to trust. I think it's, in a way, Scarpia is really immoral in a way that he goes against order of things. You know, he has his own morality which just follows his own luscious feelings, and that's a beautiful portrayal of this. Could you please play this once more in a full power? Like if you break one or two strings, no problem, you know? So what an opening, you know, a triumph of a negative figure to start with. It's very, very daring. But I want to show you how Puccini really works with these motives. And right at the very end of Act 2, and now we know, because of this talk, that Scarpia will get killed, exactly those same chords come again, but with a significant transformation. Listen to this. Now, those of you with fine ear, you notice that the original version finishes with a major chord, and this version finishes with a minor chord. Of course, in a black and white world, major means kind of happy and minor means sad. It's much more subtle than that. But in a way, it's a congenial usage of this simple fact. The beginning is loud and major, and when he dies, it's soft and minor. Could you play it even softer, please? Beautiful. And these chords, this sequence comes endless times in the opera. So just when you listen then, or re-listen because you've heard it before, search for them. So that's Scarpia. Another figure portrayed by Puccini very amazingly is this figure of the fleeing prisoners, Angelotti. So his music starts with absolutely breathless, frantic escape from the prison, full of anxiety, you know. It goes like this. Wonderful, Richard. Richard. You make me forget the orchestra for a moment. It's really great. This is in sharp contrast to the motive of Scarpia, because the Scarpia is, 3 chords, nothing more than that. This is what we call chromatics, if you can just play chromatic scale, He basically uses all keys on the keyboard, figuratively speaking, and this chromatics goes from up, down in the, in fact in discant, in the higher line, and from the bottom upwards. So we have these 2 directions coming in an anxious way to each other. And if this is a portrait of someone really fleeing through the streets of Rome, trying not to be seen, this feeling of anxiety, but also speed, which is relentless, this portrayal is absolutely fitting. But also this theme goes through transformation. For example, when Angelotti later speaks how frightened he is so scared that he is, he's afraid to look at the sun. He sings Temo del Sole, I have a fear of the sun. The same motive goes, but it completely transformed. Listen. You see? So this is a principle. One hand, so to speak, the left hand of the pianist goes down and the other goes up. This is the same principle again and again. Next figure is this sagrestano, sacristan. So in our production, this man who is often portrayed in a light, gracious way, kind of bringing contrast to the villain or to the loving couple, we have like someone who is a little villain, who is like an insignificant competitor and rival of Scarpia and tries his best really to get attention for this kind of plots. And his music goes from figure 6 like this. Thank you. So, it's a jolly music, but I asked the orchestra and hope, when you listen to our result in the theater, to really portray this time this figure with extreme poignancy, so that actually when you exaggerate a funny music like this, it becomes grotesque, burlesque, ironic, and that's done through very natural means. Like if you ask the musicians to exaggerate every single short note, that it cannot be shorter, or later if they have legato to kind of swim in it in a way which is almost too much, then suddenly you realize this figure is not what it should be. It's not a religious person who to trust, but actually yet another type of the villain. Could you just have fun, Richard, and try to exaggerate everything tastelessly? Yeah, you see, it's the same music, but it's just you have a insight, say, a hint of what it makes if you really characterize something with precise idea. But he is also a person of weight and kind of clumsy fury. If you play the figure 12, for example. I love Alessandro Corbelli, who sings about, I don't love that chap at all. It's not nice. So this motive, this graceful motive, yum, bum, bum, suddenly becomes something completely else. And that's another thing I want to show you, because this is an essential thing about the work of a composer, to have a clever motive then used in different ways, with different atmosphere, with different contexts, at different places in the opera. So when Il Sagrestano actually announces the victory of the monarchy and the allies, at that moment the same motive sounds, but a completely different, triumphant and kind of, it's his little ecstasy at this moment. Yeah, it's significantly different, but the same motive, just with different clothes, so to speak. My favorite moment is figure 57, where actually Scarpia appears for the first time on stage, and we hear his dominant chords once more. And Sagrestan, although he knows that potentially Scarpia is his ally and he really wants to impress him, he is very scared of his. And this is a fantastic opportunity for me to show you something. At figure 57, Puccini combines the motive of Scarpia, who has appeared with full presence, but later kind of remains only as a, you know, as a shadow. And can you play his chords? And they go on, but simultaneously we hear the motive of the Sagrestano, the yam pam pa ba ba bam pa bam, but hidden. Yeah, it's almost you almost cannot notice that. But can you play that little more slowly? This motive of Sagrestano. Yam, yeah, yam pam pa da da dam ti dim tam, and suddenly you see. So even if there are no words, you know Il Sagrestano is really scared and became so small because of the presence of Scarpia. Could you combine both motives together? You see? Yeah. So you see, this is the subtlety which the world of opera composers very rarely, you know, you don't see it anywhere else. Opera is so amazing for this. So I need to speed up. There is also a figure of the sister of Angelotti, Attavanti. It's quite interesting because even figures who are not presented on stage and never appear, never have any aria, they can be portrayed in music. We have figure 14, which characterizes the noble intention of the well-meaning sister of Angelotti, Marchesa Attavanti. Yeah, that's it. This descending scale. Yeah, if you can please remember that, because it comes later as something significant, and it comes then yam pam pa, this motive. And now I'd like you, Richard, to play the beginning of Cavaradossi aria, something we know so well. And there are these seemingly unimportant decorations of the flutes, but Cavaradossi is painting his picture, and actually he took took inspiration for his imagination from Marchesa Attavanti, who was earlier in the church. So actually, as he is thinking to paint something, he remembers her, but he also remembers his girlfriend, Tosca, and I'll get to that. But if you could play figure 17, this famous introduction to Cavaradossi's aria. Did you hear this? Yap, pap, pam. That's a segment from the description of Marchesa Attavanti. Da, da, di, da, yam, pam, pam. So these subtleties just never stop fascinating me. And probably the most interesting is how in this famous aria, which starts with the word recondita armonia di bellezze diverse, like the mysterious harmony of diverse beauties. So he is basically painting Attavanti while thinking of Tosca, and that's of course causing the jealousy of Tosca later. But we have a congenial way of Puccini portraying this. So if you can jump forward for this place, we know that Tosca is characterized basically by descending intervals. And I don't know if you have it. Okay, I just want to, I will get to the motive of Tosca later, but this is so fascinating. So basically, the descending interval, ta, do, di, do, di, do, di, something always connected with Tosca. When we hear about her, when she appears on stage, when Cavaradossi thinks about her. But Attavanti, the other woman, has the descending line, ta, di, ram. So what he does here, this is a little miniature portrayal of the words mysterious harmony of diverse of different beauties. You know? So listen, the high notes is Attavanti, and the descending lines is Tosca. Yeah. Anyway, I think it's time, Richard, to maybe move on, because otherwise we'll hear it until tomorrow. Great. I think it would be great to play once how Tosca is characterized. It is 2 or 3 bars before 15. This is what I meant by these descending intervals. That's the first time when Tosca and her charm kind of come to our attention. Okay, we should move on. I think I would like to present yet another thing, and that is figure 60, if you can find it, Richard. That is about Scarpia. It's important that the composers portray not just the figures in a way what they are like, but also what their intentions are. And I think we have 2 moments there. One moment is when Scarpia really presents his plots, like what he wants to do in his action to get Tosca into his bed and Cavaradossi hanged. And so this is figure 60, which is a motive of Scarpia's plotting, so to speak. A little later, when Tosca really realizes what kind of figure Scarpia is, that it will be a life-threatening problem for her further deeds, at figure 77, this same motive goes through a transformation which makes it kind of reflection of Tosca's mind. Listen to the same, but in a different atmosphere. It's about the bass line. Our creative team, to my great delight, called this place a Janáček place, you know, because it really sounds like Janáček, because it uses this whole tone scale, which you could show to us. Yeah, so it's the same progress on and on. It was a very, very fresh and modern tool at the time, and really used by Janáček. If you come to the Macropolis case, you will have the full evening of this. So my creative team was really right. And maybe the last motive I want to present is the motive of interrogation. So basically when Scarpia decides what to do, that is to torture Cavaradossi, he lets, Puccini, he lets sneak in a very kind of almost meditative theme, which seems to be innocent, but actually is then going through a change which is frightening. So it's figure 13. Yeah. So this motive, it's probably the moment where Scarpia really decides what his plot really will be, because he has Cavaradossi captured. And when he sends Cavaradossi to the torture room to apply his sadism, the same theme goes into this. Exactly. And some 5 minutes later, or maybe a little more, when Cavaradossi appears out of the torturing process and totally devastated and in a poor shape, in fact, the same motive comes in a completely different color, led by the violas and the first bassoon, and that's where we see kind of the Scarpia's intention had this devastating effect. It's a melancholy, you feel pain and a sympathy for Cavaradossi. It's figure 40. Okay, thank you. So those were a couple of examples of the figure. I would like to, acknowledge the presence of Nigel. Hello, thank you for standing here like a guardian angel. And I think we will speak about the bells. So bells were a tool for Puccini to connect us to what I call here and now of the opera. And Puccini uses the bells throughout the piece again and again. And it was also a way for him to apply this principle of ostinato, as I said. So ostinato means that one figure, one note sometimes, one motive, one harmonic pattern repeats itself endlessly. And sometimes it's just to increase the feeling of the tension, and sometimes it's to show the variety which can actually be created around the stable component. And the bells, because of course it's not like a piano or like violin, they characterize something stable always, create a beautiful opportunity to this. So first time we hear the bells significantly is when the sacristan wants to pray. It's kind of an automatic prayer, he is not really interested in it. But the bells characterize this moment. So we hear the music of sacristan first. So he knows he has to kneel and pray. And now I want you to listen. The bell sound, copied also in the piano, presents this note, which is, by chance, F, again and again. But notice what beautiful harmony, what beautiful development of music around it Puccini is able to present. So let's start with the first bells once more. You see, this is something I admire, especially today, because we have so many, say, beautiful and exciting pop songs or whatever genres, where we have like two chords and they repeat again and again. Here we have one note, and it's not boring, is it? I mean, there's the whole story told by the harmony around this one note. This is what also a kind of ostinato, just one thing remains again and again. Another similar place is where we hear about the triumph of monarchy, and there are kind of celebratory bells presenting this. So it's this andante mosso, pim, pam, pam. So it goes 1, 2. You see, so again, it's the same thing. It's the same motive repeated. And a lot of critics would say for Puccini, you repeat the same again and again. But what a mastery to do it this amazing way. And the last place, kind of the most significant in this way, is the Te Deum, the final scene of the first act, where we hear the same two notes of the bells again and again, for a significant amount of time, and it's all used to for a gradation of this triumph of Scarpia abusing, in fact, the religious moment in which we appear. So it starts with Scarpia's chords. Sorry, I have to correct myself. This is this kind of the Scarpia's energy, but the chords actually are Angelotti's, but it's not the Scarpia's theme. But it's the atmosphere is full of Scarpia. And suddenly out of nothing come these bells. Yeah, I'll stop you there, Nigel. So if you look at his part, this is like how many lines? It would go like these two notes would, I don't want to exaggerate, maybe 50 times or 60 times. But what happens is these various sequences of the chords. So let's just start once more. One before the orchestra, which is the B flat. So it's almost, we're a little bit faster than in reality, but it's almost like a trance. Scarpia is getting into his beautiful imagination of having the prohibited sex with his victim. It's really again and again the same thing. But at one point when it could become boring, the same two notes continue to sound again and again, but the harmony changes quite radically. So how about to play 84? Yeah, it's from the F. And here different chords. So you see, this is something you know as music, but I don't know if it occurred to you that these tones in the bells remain absolutely the same, and yet they present no uniformity. On the contrary, they provoke the feeling like something is rooted and stays, and therefore the things which orbit around and develop and have their own life are even more seductive. Okay. So that's the motive or phenomenon of ostinato. I would like to invite our other percussion players. Please come to us, Marcus and Laura. And we would play for you, as the end of my talk, a little moment from the beginning of Act 3. And that is a place where we have, when you come to the performances, many sets of bells placed behind the stage. I mean, it's really several stations, and Puccini wants different locations of them in order to actually have a feeling that you are in Rome and you listen to different or various bell ringing from various churches. In Rome, you know, you have like how many hundreds of churches, every street has 5 at least. And so when they really sound together, it's like a glockenspiel, you know, like some kind of music. And so this is the very special section. Puccini was very proud of this moment in his music. And he combined the most melancholic music for the string orchestra, here presented by the piano, and several sets of bells. We don't have all bells here. This is by far not everything, because some of them are so large that they wouldn't fit here. So you only can hear them in our theater. In fact, also these two pom-pom, which we've just heard, sound completely different in the theater because it's those big ones. But as an illustration for you to have a sample or taster, why not to do it? So this is the last section, okay, from figure 4. We can do, yeah. Before I give the word back, I was hoping this is a real insight, because this is not what you're going to see on stage. I'm not going to see it either, because this is completely hidden behind the set. But it's quite beautiful to actually see what place it is and what artistry it is which brings this charm of the atmosphere so typical of Puccini's work. Thank you so much.
Jakob, thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you to all the musicians. You've really unlocked some secrets of the score there, and I'm sure that you all agree. We just want to hear it back on stage now, everything put in together, and we're all going to have those little aha moments as it goes through, as we recognize these points.
You witness what is a part of my life, because if you dig in, you discover. It's a never-ending process, and that's also so beautiful to have time, like now with you, to really open some interesting cases. And I guarantee it's like exponentially more. We could really talk for 2 weeks and we would still not really exhaust what kind of master Puccini is.
And this is the brilliant thing, that we get to keep you, because you are now music director of the Opera House. So it doesn't stop here. But that is all for tonight's Insight, I am afraid. You can, however, book tickets for Oliver Meer's new production of Tosca, conducted by Jakob Huscher, on the main stage of the Royal Opera House from the 11th of September. You can also see and hear the opera at cinemas from the 1st of October. I'd like to thank all of our guests tonight, Ollie and Jakob and Simon and Anna, and all of the musicians, Laura and Marcus and Richard and Nigel, our guardian angel, how could I forget? Thank you. Thank you to all of you for being here in the Claw Studio, and everyone watching at home as well. I hope you've enjoyed this insight, supported by Rolex. Good night.